Hey, how are you? Well, this is like take 5 for this week's interactive. We're having to fire up different video equipment here. It seems our normal mechanisms are just not working on May 4th. And so May the 4th be with you and you. Hope you've had a fantastic week. Hey, it's Brandon Devnich from i3D Themes with this week's interactive, number 87, I believe it is, where we share what we're passionate about and what we've been working on in the i3D Themes Design and Code Labs. So had to turn things around and use a different camera this week here as the normal mechanism, which is actually the video is normally run through a simple iPhone with the Facebook Pages app. And it's very reliable, except today. In any case, we'll just shift gears here and I'll explain what's been going on at i3D Themes this week. So in the design lab, our goal this week was to get the Oxygen WordPress theme, in some sense, ready for the catalog. So we took the Oxygen WordPress theme, installed it to the i3D Themes demos, and got it all set up, figured out what needed to be done. And then Colin and I spoke about what it was that we wanted to be able to offer. Are we going to offer it in different colors? Are we going to offer it in different image packs? We're going to do the same thing as we did with our previous WordPress themes. Now, we have lots of options because this is a completely different framework. But it also requires quite a bit of different tooling to make the demos work, to make the add to cart mechanisms work, and the purchase and then the download. And we have great faith that we're going to be able to get that all sorted out by the end of next week. But in doing the sort of experimenting with it, it became obvious that Colin was going to need to do slightly different configurations on his end when he puts the files up to our what we call our testing and deployment server that then go up to the production server where the downloads are assembled. We should be able to have that mostly sorted out by the end of next week, and hopefully by the end of the week we'll have Oxygen at least close to being ready to being in the catalog. And once we get the process all worked out, we should be able to go and we're getting all sorts of little different. By using this different software here, I get distractions with all the little alerts that come in. In any case, back on track, Brandon. So we should be able to have Oxygen by next week, pretty much ready for the catalog. Crossing our fingers. In the code lab this week, I had Adam helping me out with the lazy loading mechanism of the Pegasus Accelerator. Now, the lazy loading mechanism, when we first started out, seemed to be A-OK. But there was always something about it that seemed to be a little bit inconsistent. In some situations, the lazy loading would work perfectly. In others, we'd be scratching our heads going, it's sort of working. And when you refresh a page and 5 out of 5 times it works and 5 out of 5 times it doesn't, or maybe it's 3 out of 10 and 7 out of 10. So those are some of the most difficult issues to troubleshoot. It's inconsistent, right? What is causing something not to work correctly? And when websites are involved, that can sometimes have something to do with how things are loading into the page and in what order, and if items are cached and are they loading faster than they did on the first load than they are on the second load. And so we spent a great deal of time this week testing the system out. And it was late yesterday that we realized that our assumptions for how lazy loading worked were incorrect. Lazy loading requires that the entire document object be more or less rendered in place. And the document is basically what you're seeing in a web page, right? So where the images are placed where they are and the styles are all assembled within the page, and the images are set at a certain width and height in a certain position in the page. And what lazy loading does is it basically hides the images until they're within the viewable region. There's no point in loading an image if you are never going to scroll down to the bottom of the page if that's where the image is. And so what it does is it allows for the web page to load very, very fast. What they call the fully loaded time, which is a very important aspect of making sure your web pages are running fast. The fully loaded time can be cut down considerably if you have lazy loading set up correctly. That's the key. And so what we found was, what we were trying to do was lazy load as fast as possible so that we didn't get a blink 1 or 2 seconds later of the image loading in. Now, most lazy loading solutions these days rely on a library called jQuery. It's a JavaScript library that makes interacting with the document, the web page, very, very easy. The trouble is that when you want to make a web page load fast, you need to defer all of those resources that are render blocking. So a CSS file is render blocking. A JavaScript file is render blocking. And so, in the traditional web page, you click on a link and your web browser would spin. You'd see the little working spin, 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 spin. And it's not that the server is slow to respond, although it may be, but it has probably already loaded the HTML, and it's still working on the 10 style sheets and the 8 JavaScript files, and each one of those requires to be loaded because they're called render blocking. They block the rendering of the web page until everything is in place. And so that's why when you click on a web page, it may take forever, but once it comes in fully loaded. Well, to speed up the load of a web page, or the rendering of a web page, I guess we would say, we deferred the loading of those CSS style sheets, the JavaScript files, and so that the web page comes in right away. And we also make sure that there's inline critical path CSS injected into the page as well, so that the web page comes up beautiful and there's no flash of unstyled content. Well, what happens then is, behind the scenes, is the JavaScript, like the jQuery, is still loading in. And so if we were waiting for lazy loading to happen, if we were relying on jQuery, those images wouldn't pop into place. If any images were lazy loaded, they wouldn't pop into place for maybe 5-6 seconds. So it's really key to make sure that the lazy loading mechanism that detects whether or not the images are within the viewable region, that fires as soon as possible. Well, the on-load mechanism is really what is required in order to load these images through lazy loading. And we were thinking, well, geez, it would be great if we could determine ahead of time, before the page even loads, which images should be lazy loaded or not. And so we finally, at the end of yesterday, determined, aha, we've got a solution, we've got a roadmap to make that happen. And so we're going to be implementing that next week. So we should have that lazy loading feature for a render block situation, which is a very rare, you don't see many web pages these days that are optimized. And to be optimized, you need to have all your render blocking resources deferred. Well, this one situation will resolve that once and for all. So we're pretty excited about implementing that. I was hoping by the end of today to have started work on the next big feature of the Pegasus Accelerator WordPress plugin, which was the implementation of something called HTTP2 push. HTTP is a protocol that communicates between your web browser and the web server, and HTTP2, I should say. And the push mechanism is a way of sort of pushing and preloading or pre-caching resources such as vital JavaScript or images ahead of time. So basically, they're loaded up immediately. We'll work on that next week. Apparently, I have a lot of stuff on my to-do list next week. Oxygen, lazy load, HTTP2 push, plus all the rest of the stuff. All in a week's work, right? So anyways, I hope you have had a fantastic week. That's just what's been keeping us busy here this week. And yeah, and you've got great plans ahead for the weekend. So we'll talk to you again next week. Hopefully I'll have fewer technical difficulties. Now, where's the stop button on this now? Oh, there we go. All right, bye-bye.